Now here's another business opportunity, and I've been looking at this opportunity for a long time because I'm a bicycle enthusiast and walking, and so I love cities. Walkable cities plus bikeable cities, and so I've also really been a student of urban planning. You can say I'm not a formal student, but these days there are a lot of YouTube channels where people are really talking about the problems. But again, when you look out into the field of who's leading, they're usually charities, and they're usually doing advocacy, trying to nag the governments into doing the right thing. And I'll explain in the next video why. Let's just say there's more effective ways. And it turns out that in all the case studies and where cities have adopted walkable cities and alternatives to the automobile, their economy flourishes, because the automobile is one of the most wasteful transit systems ever invented. So again, this is one of those quick data research. Now, even 20 years ago, just with the dawn of Google, I was able to determine that, was it 20? Maybe it was 10 years ago. Okay, I'm not going to cut this video. I'll say 15 years ago, I really started getting serious about learning what it would take to fix the unlivable cities. Mainly, so many in North America, but of course, American-style transit is like a disease that spread to China. And, why are cars so bad? I mean, the cars themselves, Paul Hawken laid this out years ago in the 90s in his book, what was that book? I can't remember now, something about ecology and commerce. And he had laid out all the opportunities. So just building a car, like he had said that building a combustion engine car consumed more oil than the car would ever actually consume in its lifetime. And of course, then the decommissioning of the used cars as well. And I think we're getting toward a better number. But the thing is, every road is an ecological disaster. So the choice in the United States to basically destroy there's obviously different waves of destruction. When the first settlers came to the United States, what's called the United States now, it was a pretty large wilderness area with very few inhabitants. So that's good for nature. And then, there were footpaths basically. And before the West was discovered and explored, there weren't even horses. So really, transit had very little impact on the ecosystems. But when you get to the idea of creating a whole transit infrastructure based on roads, every road takes a whole ecosystem and divides it, and splits it. It also, so there's the first kind of damage, the railroads as well. All of these things that get in the way of the normal migration of animal species, that's the problems. That's why we're having, it's a big contributor to the extinction crisis. So, okay, anyway, we've got these roads, and there are a lot of people looking at, what can we do to reverse this trend in the urban areas, minimize the use of cars, at least make the cities more livable, more enjoyable. There's a lot of visions for eco-cities with just much more greenery and reintegrating agriculture into the urban fabric. Many beautiful ideas. Very few of them are funded properly, but the opportunity to do that is quite large. So let's look at some of the big numbers. When I first started looking at this issue in 2015, by then already the utilization rate for cars, which means out of the whole built infrastructure of cars, how many were actually moving at any given time? And the best estimates in that era were only 5%. That meant that the automobile transit system was basically 20 times overbuilt. That costs a lot of money. Imagine that you wanted to have a shoe factory and that you wanted to maximize your investment in the infrastructure of the factory. most factories try to run 24 hours a day so that they're getting the most productivity per the investment in infrastructure. So you compare that, the ideal would be 100% utilization. Obviously, that doesn't happen anywhere. But when you go down to numbers like 5%, and I've heard numbers now as low as 2%, it's anywhere from 20 to 50-fold overbuilt and wasteful. Now, I started working on this idea really long before Tesla came around, but you can see how Elon Musk and Tesla is looking at these numbers, and you can see the vast, there's just so many trillions of dollars spent on that industry. And if you can come up with a more efficient way to provide transit for people at lower cost, you're going to scoop up just trillions of dollars of revenue. And so, the electric car was the beginning step in enabling a solar economy. And the main benefit of in the early days, the main benefit of the electric car was that it didn't put out exhaust pollution. So that by itself made the cities cleaner, and it's much easier to control pollutants that are coming out of a central power plant. But of course, people complain, well, those plants are made, they run on coal, but even so, that was a baby step forward in reducing the total pollution output, and a big step forward in creating breathable air where the transit systems were car-based. But then you can see why Elon has been so dedicated to, really the next big step actually was the founding of Uber. So the car ownership in the United States has been declining ever since 2009. It's just too expensive. It's a waste of time, and you've got licenses and inspections. I mean, when you really aggregate all the costs it takes to own an individual car, it's always been a bad deal. And one of the things I really enjoy on some of these YouTube channels about, they call it, I think, new urbanism. They say that the sign of a rich country is not one where the poor people are driving cars. A rich country is where the rich people take public transit. And of course, they look at countries like Switzerland, which is one of the richest countries. And there you're going to find, the social elite on the same transit as the regular folks. And why does this work? It works because in the end, people just want to take whatever transit is most convenient for them and the lowest cost. So if it's faster, like I used to live in DC, and back then I don't know how it is now, but we're talking about in the 90s and the early 2000s. And the subway was a really great system, but it was also slow. And I lived near the US Capitol building. So if I wanted to go have a meeting over at like the old executive office building, which was by the White House, I could take the subway, but I had a car, and it was actually more convenient just to drive and circle around and find a parking spot. And I had kind of a spiritual technique for finding parking spots. So, that's not great for the environment, but it was more convenient. And this is the real problem. I'm not proud of that per se, but I'm a human being like you, and we're going to take whatever method of transit gets us there the fastest and the most safely. So Uber was really born from the same understanding. Like I had looked at these numbers really, now I'm thinking, how long ago did I look at those numbers? I was still in DC, so I'm going back and forth in this video, I'm sorry, but it was around 2000 I started charting out some of these huge opportunities. And the thing is, the waste in the transit system was so much back then, and this was before the iPhone. I thought, well, if we could just deal with the logistics, it would just be cheaper for everyone to have free Cadillac limousines driving them around, than it would be to operate the automotive transit system. So it's very sad to me seeing that China basically copied our idiotic transit system. Because when I was in China in 1982, and there's basically almost no cars and everybody was on bicycles. And of course, I'm a bike lover, and just, being in those seas of bicycles, and the bicycle parking was so convenient. It was such a beautiful experience. Of course, all that's probably wiped out now. And now, if you're going to ride a bike, you're going to be, some kind of an athlete, as opposed to just using the bike as transit. So anyway, how do we make? So now we're talking, again, probably several $1 trillion a year. I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, but that number of only 2% to 5% utilization over trillions of dollars, and you've got this massive market opportunity wherever transit has been, Americanified, westernized in that way. Now, what do you do about that? Well, I'll talk about that in the next video. What we're going to do, we're going to learn from Walmart how to make our cities great. So join me in the next video to learn what I learned from Walmart and how to use that to basically solve almost any problem facing the planet today. All right, talk to you in the next video.